Cannabis isn't just a plant, it's a mirror, and most people aren't ready to face what it reflects. You've heard the labels: miracle medicine or dangerous vice, spiritual portal or mind-numbing escape, sacred sacrament or sinful indulgence. All evocative, but none of them get to the heart of what this plant truly is. Because the truth is, cannabis doesn't conform to your beliefs. It amplifies what already lives inside you, and that's what makes it so powerful, and yes, so dangerous. In ancient traditions, cannabis wasn't a tool for downtime. It was a portal. The plant was only used by those who had already committed to meeting themselves fully. No filters, no distractions. Shamans, mystics, seekers, they didn't smoke to decorate the ego, they smoked to dissolve it. Today, it's everywhere, sold like candy, smoked like a trend, worshipped like a lifestyle. Ritual has become routine, the sacred turned into spectacle. This isn't a sermon about weed being good or bad. It's an inquiry into what happens to your soul. Long before the commercial joint or mass market product existed, cannabis was handled with reverence, care, and full awareness of the door being opened. Ancient India offered it to Shiva, god of destruction, transformation, illusion, undone. His seekers didn't consume it to feel relaxed. They consumed it so their ego could die. The chillum was no accessory, it was a sacrament. In Taoist alchemy, cannabis was mixed with other herbs to refine energy, silence the mind, trigger visionary dreams. It wasn't used to numb the senses. It was used to awaken subtle perception. These traditions describe it as a spirit ally, capable of sharpening insight or unbalancing your chi, depending on the alignment inside you. If you were unprepared, it wasn't a gift, it was a test. Sufi mystics used hashish in ceremonies to dissolve the self into divine presence. But even there, the plant was controversial. It was only revered if it led to ego annihilation, not ego amplification. Handle it like a sword, with respect, or it will cut the hand that grips it. In the Rastafari tradition, cannabis, ganja, is the herb of wisdom, healing of the nations. It's not an escape, it's a tool of communion, integrated with worship, prayer, thought, and group reflection. The herb doesn't shut down the world, it helps you remember the divine within it. And yet, here we are. In the modern West, the sacrament became a souvenir. What once required intention now demands nothing. You can buy it at drive-through windows, light up between texts, scroll while you float in synthetic calm. The plant may be the same, but the context has changed. Without ritual, cannabis loses its compass. When the ceremony disappears, all that's left is sensation. And sensation, without direction, becomes indulgence. The danger here isn't the plant. It's the assumption that you're engaging with something sacred when you're not. Cannabis doesn't promise consistency. It offers amplification. If you're grounded, it deepens you. If you're lost, it magnifies the maze. Many walk into that temple with muddy feet and wonder why they see only shadows. There are things uncovered in hermetic, gnostic, mystical traditions about cannabis we can't fully explore here, but links are in the description for deeper study. Here's the key. Cannabis doesn't decide where you go. It holds up a mirror, your fears, your unresolved grief, your unspoken questions. It reflects them. It doesn't care about your vibe, it cares about your intention. That's why in so many traditions the preparation was the ritual. Fasting, chanting, silence, cleansing, all before the first inhale. Not superstition. They knew the mind needed stability before expansion. Used with reverence, cannabis isn't a drug, it's a door. But doors open both ways, to light and to shadow. The worst illusion is believing you can walk both directions when you've prepared for neither. There's a reason why so many users report anxiety, paranoia, or that eerie sense of being watched. They blame strain, dosage, chemistry, but what if it's not the weed at all? What if the plant is doing exactly what it was always designed to do? Strip away noise, pierce illusion, show you what's hiding underneath. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of your psyche you reject, forget, or never dared to meet. Not evil, but uncomfortable. Not malicious, but inconvenient. It's the grief you never processed, the anger you swallowed, the truth you couldn't face. The plant doesn't make these, it reveals them. It amplifies what's already playing. And this is the part no one likes to talk about because it doesn't sell. Spiritual seekers know the path to awakening begins in the underworld, not in visions, but in discomfort, not in light, but in confrontation. When used consciously, cannabis can be one of the most effective tools. But only if you're ready, only if you're willing to look without a mask. In mystical psychology, this exposure is sacred. It's not failure, it's invitation. That creeping anxiety after a puff, that spiraling self-consciousness, that rising paranoia, not a malfunction, it's feedback. Your filters breaking down, your inner guard dogs panicking because your ego fortress is being breached. But modern culture provides no guide, no shaman, no elder, no circle. Just you in your room, heart racing, wondering why you feel like you're dissolving, because you are. That's what the plant does. It dissolves the artificial, burns away the performance. If you're unprepared, it can feel like a nightmare, not because the plant is wrong, but because the encounter is real. Esoteric traditions understood this. In psychic self-defense literature, Dion Fortune wrote about altered states making the etheric body porous, not just to insight, but to external energetic interference. If your inner house is chaotic, cannabis doesn't fix it. It turns up the volume. It invites everything to the surface. Healing must happen. But if you run from that surfacing, numb it, distract from it, the cycle repeats. High, high, hope, until nothing feels sacred, only noisy. That's why, despite being natural, cannabis isn't automatically safe. It doesn't pick the ready from the unready. It doesn't decide who should sleep and who should wake. It simply opens the curtain. What you do with what's behind it is up to you. And here's the biggest misunderstanding. Believing that the plant is supposed to make you feel better. That's the lie. The truth, it's supposed to make you see the pain, the joy, the confusion. It's information. Your spirit saying, here, this, look. Because we've been trained to fear discomfort, we call those moments bad trips and walk away. No reflection, no learning. Just another story about weed making us anxious. But cannabis didn't make you anxious. It showed what you were already carrying. It didn't invent the discomfort. It revealed it. That's what makes it one of the most honest substances you'll ever meet. But honesty isn't always kind. Truth doesn't always feel good. The plant is a mirror, and sometimes what it shows isn't pretty, but maybe it's exactly what you needed to see. One of the greatest spiritual traps, mistaking sensation for truth. Cannabis brilliantly tempts you. The music deepens. Thoughts feel profound. Synchronicities pop like secret messages from the universe. Your journal overflows with insights. It feels mystical, but ask, does it transform you? A high can be seductive. It can mimic transcendence, mimic peace. But imitation is not integration. Feeling expanded is not becoming whole. Cannabis can create the appearance of spiritual clarity, but without the structure, without foundation, it's dangerous. Not because it harms the body, but because it tricks the soul into thinking it has arrived. You start believing you've evolved because you felt something deep. But depth isn't measured by intensity, It's measured by what you carry back from the experience and how you live when it fades. Many smokers report breakthroughs, trauma revealed, oneness felt, presence in the moment. These are real, but the danger arises when those revelations float in the ether, unanchored. They become what esoteric teachers call spiritual inflation, ego swelling around the feeling of transformation without the sustained work to ground it. In Hermetic traditions, it's called the false light, experiences that look awakened but are only mental simulations. In Kabbalistic mysticism, it's the sphere of Hod, the brilliance of intellect divorced from grounded truth. It glows like gold, but crumbles like ash. You think you've seen the light, but what you've seen is only your reflection in a mirror. It's no coincidence many long-term users begin to equate insight with identity. They start wearing the experience, talking like mystics, quoting philosophers, but their lives, patterns, relationships don't deepen. Their suffering doesn't dissolve. It becomes poetic instead of healed. The plant has become a prop in a performance of progress. Osho once said, "Substances open doors that only silence should open." He wasn't denying their power. He was warning about their instability. A door forced open doesn't stay open, and the vision it offers can distort reality if the mind isn't ready. The high becomes a pedestal. You look down at those who haven't seen what you've seen, when in reality, you still haven't clearly seen anything. You only felt something intensely. The problem, not the insight, it's what you do with it. Cannabis can absolutely offer perspective, but unless that perspective becomes practice, it's just stimulation. If it doesn't shift how you show up in conflict, how you face your shadow, how you serve others, how you move through suffering, then it's a spiritual distraction dressed as awakening. That's the danger. Not the plant, not the smoke. The story you tell yourself about what it means. The high isn't the truth, it's a doorway, and if you stay standing there thinking you've arrived, you never step into the room. You become addicted, not to the substance, but to the illusion of progress, and that illusion is harder to detox from than any chemical dependency. This is why traditions with depth never worshipped the high. They used it to point to something deeper. They didn't glorify the vision. They asked, "What does this demand of you?" Because real awakening isn't what happens with the plant, it's what happens after, in the silence that follows, in the choices that emerge, in the humility to realize that seeing something once doesn't mean understanding it. Cannabis offers access, not arrival, but the world doesn't need more access, it needs more anchors, more people who don't just visit the sacred, they embody it, who don't just feel truth, they live it. Cannabis doesn't only impact the mind, it touches the subtle body. The invisible architecture of being that carries your thoughts, emotions, memories, energetic imprints. You can't see it, but you feel it. And when the plant interacts with that field, it doesn't ask permission. It amplifies what's already there. That's why for some it unlocks intuition and presence. For others, it unearths chaos. That chaos isn't random. It's the byproduct of energy that hasn't been cleared. Think of your subtle body as a musical instrument. When it's in tune, cannabis can act like a bow across a string, drawing out resonance and silence. But when the instrument is dusty, misaligned, the plant only amplifies noise, and many confuse noise for wisdom. You feel more, but you're not necessarily seeing more. You're just louder inside, and when your inner space is crowded, clarity becomes impossible. Traditions that understood this spoke of energetic hygiene. Not mystical fluff, but spiritual hygiene. In the same way you shower your body, you must cleanse your subtle self. Fasting, breath work, chanting, cold exposure, prayer, silence. These aren't accessories. They stabilize the field so that when you open the door with a plant like cannabis, you're not stepping into a room filled with unresolved debris. In Reiki or other energetic healing practices, cannabis is sometimes described as a field disruptor. Not because it's harmful, but because it creates a surge in sensitivity. That surge can help you access subtle energies or leave you porous. Ungrounded practitioners often find sessions become unstable post-use. Sensations rise, but control falls. Same in Kundalini work. Cannabis may awaken dormant energy before your system is ready. You feel open, electric, euphoric, until you don't, until you crash, spiral, or find yourself unable to integrate. Amazonian shamans say, every plant opens, but every plant also tests. Cannabis is no exception. They believe each plant holds consciousness, a spirit, a frequency. When that spirit enters you, it communicates not through words, but through emotion, memory, energetic sensation. If your mental, emotional, spiritual system is cluttered, the communication gets scrambled. The plant gets filtered through your residue. Instead of clarity, you receive confusion wearing the garb of insight. This is why many feel drained, unfocused, emotionally raw after heavy use. Not because the plant is inherently draining, but because they entered it unprepared. No clearing, no containment, no reverence. It's like plugging a delicate instrument into a distorted amplifier with frayed wires. The result isn't music, it's noise. And the longer you do it, the more it dulls your sensitivity. Cannabis interacts with your energy like fire hitting a dry forest. It spreads, it consumes, it brings light, but only if the space is clean, but without grounding, without clarity. Without boundaries, the process fails. You lose focus. Willpower dips. You begin to live in a fog that feels peaceful, but underneath is stagnation. And here's the subtle danger. You begin to call that fog calm. You begin to equate dullness with healing. But healing isn't numbness. Healing is clarity. Healing is power returning, not being suspended. Cannabis, when used without energetic awareness, can mask imbalance rather than resolve it. So the question becomes, is your system clean enough for clarity? Have you prepared the inner temple before inviting the plant? Because cannabis doesn't clean the house, it just flips on the lights. What you see depends entirely on what's already there. There was a time when cannabis was only used when the soul was ready. Now, it's used because the week ends. The shift happened slowly, disguised as liberation. What was sacred became symbolic. Intentional became impulsive. We went from smoker's spirit to smoker's comfort. In the process, we didn't lose the plant's power, we lost our way of holding it. In Rastafari tradition, cannabis wasn't lonely in a room to cope with stress. It was part of reasoning sessions, ritual gatherings for philosophical and spiritual reflection. The smoke rose with prayers, with heartbeat of drums. It wasn't about feeling good. It was about finding alignment with Jah, the one source. If your heart wasn't clean, the herb would show you. It wasn't entertainment, it was initiation. In the African diaspora, cannabis wasn't always central, yet the underlying principle stands. Every plant holds a spiritual frequency. To misuse a plant is to misuse its energy and invite imbalance. Ritual created the container. Ceremony determined the effect. Nothing sacred was taken by chance. There was no casual consumption, only communion. But that's not what modern culture wanted. Ritual demands time, discipline, humility. It's inconvenient, and capitalism thrives on convenience. So the plant was extracted from roots, sanitized for mass use, packaged as lifestyle. Now it's wrapped in sleek branding, endorsed by influencers, pitched like a wellness smoothie. This will make you feel better. No mention of shadow, no mention of mirror. Just pastel fonts, an empty mindfulness. The sacred was commercialized, the ceremony deleted. Cannabis became a product, not a portal. Today people light up while binge-watching shows. Menus in one hand, phone in the other. No container, no chant, no silence. Just stimulation piled on stimulation. In that layered chaos, the plant becomes fog, not fire, numbness, not clarity. Even festivals marketing spiritual vibes reduce the plant to background noise. Ritual becomes performance, ceremony becomes costume, The transformative essence gets buried under aesthetics. But cannabis has no interest in being aesthetic. Its spirit is ancient, wild, unapologetically real. It doesn't care about your branding, it cares about your intention. Without a container, its energy spills. It flows into your distractions, into your dis-ease, into your undealt wounds. Without direction, it simply amplifies your current state. That's why with the same plant, some people feel lifted and others feel stuck. Same plant, different vessel. So maybe the question is no longer just what are you smoking for, but who are you smoking with? Because the presence or absence of a sacred container often determines whether the plant becomes your teacher or your distraction. There comes a point in every seeker's journey when the thrill of the experience begins to fade. Vision becomes repetitive. Insights echo what you've heard before. And that's when the deeper path begins. Not with more intensity, but with more honesty. Because real work doesn't happen in the high. It happens when you're sober. Discernment becomes the new high. Not stimulation, but clarity. Not euphoria, but alignment. Cannabis can open doors. That's never been in question. But opening doors is easy. Walking through them with intention, integration, humility. That's what most avoid because it's harder than chasing the feeling. It's easier to light up than to sit still. Easier to feel deep than to live deep. But feeling something doesn't make it true. Discernment is what separates illusion from insight. It keeps you from mistaking echo for essence. In Greek philosophy, it's called crisis, the inner blade that cuts through deception. In Vedanta, it's viveka, the power to distinguish the real from the unreal. This isn't about cynicism, it's about maturity. It's the ability to question even your most profound experiences. Is this truth or just what I wanted to hear? Because cannabis gives you both. It speaks in riddles, poetry, emotion, and if you're not grounded, you'll build belief systems out of metaphors never meant to be literal. That's where spiritual inflation begins. The ego rebrands itself as enlightened. It starts speaking mystic, quoting scriptures, yet living unchanged. It becomes addicted, not to the plant, but to the feeling of being special. You confuse sensitivity with superiority. You stop listening to anything that doesn't support the high. This is why discernment must come before cannabis becomes a spiritual tool. Without it, you're not opening to higher truth. You're rearranging furniture in your delusion. The plant amplifies what's already there. If you carry confusion, it blossoms. If you carry clarity, it deepens. The plant does not discriminate, it simply reflects. So the question, are you willing to sharpen your inner blade? Are you ready to ask the uncomfortable questions about your intentions, expectations, patterns? Are you ready to set the plant down when it no longer serves your growth? That may be the hardest test of all, not using the plant when you don't need it. To realize the wisdom was never in the leaf, but in how the leaf helped you remember your own. Cannabis is not the path, it's a compass. It can point, but it cannot walk the way for you. It cannot carry you. The plant may hold up the mirror, but mirrors don't create. They reflect, they don't move. You do, and if the reflection becomes the focus, you forget what you were shown. This is the moment many never reach. They stop at sensation, they stop at the poetry, but the mystics, the seekers, the ones who truly walk, go further. They learn to trust the quiet after the high. They learn to listen for the messages that don't come wrapped in euphoria. They learn to sit with discomfort and ask, what is this here to teach me? Because the goal isn't staying high, the goal is staying awake. Not just when the plant opens your eyes, but when you wake each morning and choose to live grounded, aligned, real. That's the true spiritual practice. That's the path beyond illusion. There comes a point when every tool must be laid down, every shortcut surrendered, every high examined for what it truly was, a spark, a signal, a beginning, not a destination. Cannabis is not the answer, never was. At best, it's a teacher. At worst, it becomes another distraction dressed as depth. And if you're listening, truly listening, you'll sense when it's time to stop chasing the smoke and start building the fire within yourself. The greatest lesson cannabis can teach is that you never needed it, not because it's worthless, but because its power was always meant to reflect what was dormant inside you, something waiting to be remembered. The clarity you felt was yours, the stillness, the insight, the connection. None of it came from the plant. It only peeled back what you'd forgotten to feel. But remembering is not the same as becoming. The journey doesn't end with what you saw. It begins with what you do now. That's why ancient traditions didn't glorify the plant. They respected it. Used it as a doorway, but never as a crutch. The ceremony ended, and the integration began. You took what you saw and turned it into action, into presence, into humility. You walked into conflict differently, loved with fewer conditions, served from a deeper place. That's the point. That's the whole point. What good is vision if you never change how you live? What use is insight if you never apply it in your actual life? The messy, mundane, everyday. It's easy to feel spiritual in smoke and silence, harder in traffic, heartbreak, the endless repetition of the ordinary. But that's where real spiritual growth happens, not on the mountaintop, but in the valley, not in the altered state, but in the everyday choice to remain awake, even when it would be easier to sleep. Integration isn't glamorous, it's not psychedelic, it's not aesthetic, it's discipline, it's follow through. It's knowing when to close the door to ceremony and open the door to life, and walk through it with grace. This is what the plant asks of you, not worship, not blind reverence, but embodiment. You are never meant to become dependent on the teacher, you are meant to graduate. You're not here to orbit meaning, you're here to make it real, to take the fragments of truth you glimpsed and ground them into how you speak, how you listen, how you show up when no one's watching. That's where the plant becomes legacy, not just a substance you use, but a spirit that shaped you, not a high you chased, but a mirror you faced again and again until it showed something real. Here's what's real. The sacred doesn't need cannabis. The sacred is already in you. The question is, are you willing to live like it? Are you willing to stop looking for the signal outside and start transmitting it from within? In the end, it's not about the plant, it's about you. Not what you smoke, but what you become. Not the highs, but how you walk through the lows. The plant showed you what's possible. Now you decide. Will you chase the light, or become it? If this video resonated with you, subscribe and share your story in the comments below and let us know. What mirror did you face? And what will you do with it?